Hey, how you doing there again, folks? Me again, of course, Brandon Wenzel. Come back at you with another confession off my Concert Confession series. Yes, indeed, folks, Concert Confession series is a vlog series I've been doing for a little while now, where I go over there and I talk about concerts and other live events that I've recently attended. It's an opportunity for me to go over there and confess my concert sins, recount my recreational revelries, and muse over my musical misadventures. Basically, it's just a big opportunity for me to go over there and stand on a soapbox and say, look at these cool things I did. But we'll get to that. Folks, it's super simple format. I'm going to go over there and yammer on typically about 20 minutes or so and just kind of talk about the ins and outs and all the stuff that happened to have gone on at the show. Whilst I'm doing so, I'm in my back room today, which means we get Peter Can Thunderbolt poster. Ooh, Peter Can Thunderbolt poster. Whilst I'm doing all that, folks, I am doing something else. What is it? I'm wearing a super cool shirt. Folks, when I wear super cool shirts, I always like to highlight the super cool shirt. What super cool shirt am I wearing for you today? Happens to be my Sax Squad shirt. Look, it's a man in a Bigfoot costume playing the saxophone riding a unicorn. It doesn't get any better than that. And it's also somewhat prevalent to the concert confession format, because the way that I do things, whenever possible, is I like to go over there and wear a shirt representing the previous episode of Concert Confessions. And the last show that I went to happened to be a Sax Squad show. And as I stated, he is a man who wears a Bigfoot costume who plays the saxophone. Plays a mix of covers and original songs over sort of EDM kind of dance style music. It is a tremendous amount of fun to get to see him live. I highly recommend it. If you don't believe me, I don't know why you wouldn't, but I actually have some videos of his performance that I attended. Those videos are on my channel, in case maybe you want to check them out. If nothing else, I'd be more than happy to point you in the right direction as far as his music is concerned, because it's fucking Sax Squatch! But anyway, what are we doing here today, folks? What's going on? What concert am I going to be talking about? Well, folks, this is episode number 24 of my Concert Confession series, concert number 197. I'm so close to 200. It is on the cusp of my fingertips. It's also me talking about going to see South Arcade out at a venue called the Beat Kitchen. That's really the main kick of this whole thing. South Arcade is a band that I love. I actually saw them once earlier in the year, and when they announced they were going to be doing a headlining tour, I was super excited and so happy I got to go. But before I get into that, I do have a format to this format that I like to go over there and sort of follow. So the first thing that I always like to talk about is the venue itself, which, as I mentioned before, is a place called the Beat Kitchen. Beat Kitchen is in kind of downtown. Well, downtown is Chicago. It's a venue that I've been to a number of times over the years. I actually hadn't been there in a couple of years. I think the last time I was there was when Bloodywood came through. And it was really interesting seeing Bloodywood in that setting, because that was on their first U.S. headlining tour. And now getting to see South Arcade in their first U.S. headlining tour. And it's very much kind of a venue where, if you want to play Chicago, you want to do some headlining work, but maybe you're not, super sure about how the turnout's going to be, it's kind of the perfect spot. It's a relatively small venue, but it's a good space with some really good sound to it. And it's one of those venues that's not super hard to sell out. To that end, it was in fact sold out. In fact, it was sold out when I saw Bloodywood. 1 second, real quick. There's an adorable hamster. She's adorable and I love her. Hello, little girl. How are you doing? Who's my cutie? Who's my cutie? I love you because you're silly. Oh, she's a hamster. How you doing, Noah? Do you like some treats? Yeah, who gets treats? There we go, okay. Yep. I have hamsters, by the way. I'm down to 2 of them, sadly, but my little girl Noah just popped her head out, and she's adorable. She needs a treat. Anyway, back to talking about the Beat Kitchen. It was really cool because, when I got to see Bloodywood at Beat Kitchen a couple years ago, it was one of those things where I knew I'd never see them again at that venue, because I knew they were going to blow up and become bigger. That's very much how I feel about South Arcade. I'm so happy I got to see them in that setting because, and I don't mean this as an offense to Beat Kitchen. Again, I think they're a great venue, but I don't think South Arcade's going to be playing there the next time they come through. Um, but again, I do need to really emphasize it's a cool venue. Um, the space is a little bit limited, but they make good use of it. The sound, like I said, because it is a somewhat smaller venue, the acoustics are actually really good in there. And for the most part, the overall sound quality was pretty solid. There were a couple issues here and there that I'll talk about when I get to the band stuff, but by and large, it's a cool venue. I've never had any problems there or anything like that. The only thing that was a little bit annoying was when I got there, there was a line of people outside. So I stood, outside the line, or stood outside with the line. And after standing there for like about half an hour, mind you, it's rainy, it's cold. At this point, someone from the staff comes outside and is like, hey, the only people who need to stay outside are the people who are under 21. Anyone else, you can come inside. Boy, oh boy, you really could have maybe let us know about that a little bit earlier. That would have been nice. But otherwise, it's a cool venue. They actually have some good food there too. I don't have anything bad to say about Beat Kitchen. Again, it's a great sort of starter venue for bands that are coming up, and I think it's a cool spot. But let's talk about the bands, because that's the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. So there were only 2 bands on the bill, which was actually kind of nice, because the older I get, the more I appreciate being able to get out of a show early. In fact, I took the night off of work, specifically so that I could go to the show. Had I realized, I actually could have gone to work that night. That's how early it got out. But the 2 bands were obviously South Arcade, who were headlining, and another band whose name I'm going to butcher the shit out of. I'm going to go with Raue. Yes, because it's Raue. I'm going to go with Raue or Raue or something like that. I don't know. Folks, it's great to go over there and have a band name that's unique and that stands out, but it's probably good that it goes over there and is relatively easy to pronounce as well. So Raue, that's what I'm going with, was a duo. You had a female singer and guitarist, and then you had a guy on drums. And I didn't know what to make of their whole setup, and because like duos can be awesome, absolutely. Or they can be really not awesome. I've seen a couple of duos where it was like, you could just feel that it just wasn't complete, But that definitely wasn't the case with Raue. They were actually really awesome. Like, to the extent where, and I even mentioned this to the singer after the show when I went over there and got to talk to her for a little bit, seeing them up there, because like they're a younger, group, and seeing them up on stage and like really just sort of tearing it up, lots of energy, just really putting, they're all into it, even on a relatively small stage like that, it made me feel younger. Not young, I'm too old to feel young, but it made me feel younger and brought me back to, my days when, I was a young metalhead, going to my first shows and stuff like that. Back when the bands that I went to go see could still go over there and, properly thrash around and stuff like that without risk of, throwing out a disc or something like that. I had a lot of fun with their show. They're kind of a punk band, I guess. That was kind of the energy I got from them. But like for being, just a 2-person group, they really went over there and put a lot into their show, and it was pretty damn awesome. However, there was an issue, couple issues. The first one was that because they were a 2-person outfit, they actually had a whole bunch of gear set up to basically help sort of compensate for the fact that there were only 2 people there. They basically had a bunch of stuff set up so that, like when the guy would drum, there would also be like a bass line that would kick in and stuff like that, which is cool. It's a neat setup, and it's cool that bands can do that these days. But their setup was not working properly for like, I'm going to say 90% of their set. Their tech guys, Zool bless them, man, they were trying their damnedest to get that thing up and running. And they eventually did. but they definitely had a lot of technical issues. And I'm not kidding when I say they had more stuff on stage with their whole setup than South Arcade did, and South Arcade had twice as many band members. So, again, I think it's cool that they're a duo and stuff like that, but boy, oh boy, did they have to have that setup to help compensate for that. But they were awesome. Like, the singer was badass. The other issue I did have, and I mentioned this briefly with the venue, her vocals were a little bit not the best when it came to the sound quality. I think they could have gone over there and worked on that a little bit more. It wasn't the worst I've heard or anything, but it was one of those things where, like, and it did seem to improve a little bit as time went by. But yeah, I would have liked, just a little bit more clarity with their vocals. But I definitely had a blast watching them. Like, even with the issues, the technical stuff, man, I thought they were fucking fun, man. I just had a lot of fun with them. I even managed to go over there, get some pictures with them after the show. They were really nice folks. Only point of contention. Only point of contention. So the lead singer, she also being the guitarist, she had this really sort of weird tendency where like she would go through a lot of picks. And I'm not saying like she'd go, do a pick and then toss one out to the crowd. She'd like go through a pick, and I don't know if she was just dropping them or if she was like intentionally tossing them on the ground. And that is, that's neither here nor there. But by the end, there were like a few that were left on the stage, and some guys close to me actually went over there and grabbed one. I went over there and asked the drummer, I'm like, hey, dude, could I have one? And he mentioned specifically, he's like, actually, she's kind of, lost quite a few of them. We need the rest of them for the, as many as we can keep for the rest of the tour. But he's like, I'll go over there when you, get to the merch table, I'll give you a drumstick. And it did make me feel good about not taking one of the picks, because I didn't want to deprive them of that pick. But when I eventually did go to the merch table later on, he did not remember me. Now, I didn't broadcast myself because I wasn't going to do that. But as a result, I didn't get a stick. I'm not saying. I'm just saying, because he said he would remember me. I'm a little bit stung. I'm not actually stung, but I did actually manage to go over there and get one of their set lists, though. And I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. But anyway, Raue, or however the fuck they pronounce their name, I had a blast, man. I thought they were a really cool band. I like what they're doing. Let's talk about South Arcade. So I got into South Arcade in sort of late 2024 and quickly became enamored with them. They're a band out of the UK. They're another young band. They have a sort of kind of like late 90s, early 2000s sort of retro style to them. And that's my era, so like I feel it in my heart. And I love them. I think they're really awesome. And I was really fortunate when, just several months ago, they went over there and they were on tour with a band called Magnolia Park for their first U.S. tour. So I got to see them there. I actually did a Concert Confessions episode about that. So I'm just saying. When I saw, hey, we're going to be doing our first U.S. headlining tour, I was one of the people at their first show going over there and tell them, hey, the next time you come through, you need to be headlining. Because they were the opener for that show, and people were loving it. And yeah, that carried through. My hope was that it wouldn't end up being a thing where, they end up doing a U.S. headlining tour and nobody showed up except me and 5 other nerds. But no, their entire fucking tour sold out. Seriously. How badass is that? South Arcade are such a fun band to see live. And part of it does harken back to what I was saying about Raue, or again, whatever the hell their name is. Just seeing a band, that's young enough where they have that energy and they can go over there and really just like kick it into that gear that most of the bands that I watch, that are bands I grew up with, they don't have that gear anymore. Some do. Some manage to keep it, but it's a hard thing to do. I don't even have that gear anymore. I was also really fortunate where I was like right up front at the stage. Not quite center, but, slightly off to the left. So it was really cool, like, just getting to see them right up front and, like, just be part of that energy. They are one of the bands that I smile the most when I go to see. There's just so much fun up stage. And, they're a great band that, like, vibes with the crowd, The crowd feeds them the energy, they feed it right back. And, like, you can tell that they're having fun. And it really, again, like that hard, that really does sort of go back to, just them being a younger band, still having this really cool experience to go through, not being, jaded by, decades of being on the road. But there's so much fun to what they do. And they managed to really kill it on stage. And it was great getting to see them in a headlining role this time because the first time I saw them, they're the openers. They only get a few songs to go. So you're just going to get, the ones that everybody knows. This time around, of course, you went over there, you got to see some deeper cuts. You got to see some of their older stuff, some of their brand new stuff. And that was really cool. I like that mix. I thought their set list was absolutely great. And uh, speaking to the sound quality for them was fantastic. The singer, who is a just absolutely badass, uh, they really got her vocals great. Like to the extent where, like, I did take some video, obviously, of their shows. I take videos of shows. People who piss on that, kiss my ass. Even with my crappy ass phone doing the recording, her vocals still come through really good. So their setup was really nice. And the thing was, again, it was like actually simpler than the band before them, but they still managed to just make it work really well. Um, I had so much fun, man. Again, like from start to finish, ear to ear smile. They are one of those bands where, again, like they're not going to be playing at places like the Beat Kitchen the next time they come around. They're just going to get bigger and bigger. And I genuinely consider myself, incredibly fortunate that, I get to be at this part of their journey, so early in because I fully believe that they're just going to get bigger and bigger. Uh, that all said, let's talk about the crowd. The crowd overall was fantastic. There were, but I loved this crowd because just like the bands were, again, a little bit younger, this was a relatively younger crowd than, to myself. And to be fair, there were other people there my age, sure. But the thing is that this was a crowd that wasn't jaded. And the thing is, I've been to 197 shows. I still love going to shows. It's one of my favorite things in the world. But, when you've been to so many of them, you kind of, a little bit of the mystique wears off over time. The people who were at this show, and like even when I was standing outside, I was talking with, some of these folks and, who are, again, they're younger than me, and they're over there and they're like so excited. They're like, I can't believe it. We're going to get out. One guy's over there. Do you think we'll get to see him? I don't know. And then I like pulled out my phone and like showed him the pictures that I got with him the last time I saw him. And it's cool. Like I get to be like like even though again I'm a jaded old guy, I get to be a little bit of an elder statesman at this point in my concert career. It's kind of fun. I had so much fun just with the crowd. Really good folks. The extra thing, and this ties back to what I was talking about, the set list that I got from Raue, or again, whatever the hell their name is. There was a dad with his like 9 or 10-year-old daughter who was insanely adorable, who was right behind me. And she actually went over there and she'd like lost a tooth recently, and I was comparing my goofy lost tooth, and she was sweet as anything. And when I went over there and I got the set list, normally that's something I would hang on to, as a token for the show. But I went over there, I gave it to her because I felt, hey, that's, and the dad was super fucking cool and appreciative about it. He actually got a picture of me and his daughter, throwing up the metal horns. I just want to give a huge shout out to both him and her. He's raising his daughter the right way, and they were so much fun to hang out with at the show. It was so cool getting to see like, again, just so many young people in the crowd. Like, cause it wasn't a 21-year-old or over show. There were other people there, and so you had a nice range of folks. The one person who kind of fucked it up for me a little bit. After the show, I was waiting because I knew that South Arcade was going to be coming back around, and I'm waiting, but at a certain point I realized I have to shit. And I tried to hold off, but it wasn't. If I stayed much longer, I was going to shit my pants. So I went to go down to the washroom, and the washrooms at Beat Kitchen are tiny, at least the guys are. I don't know about the girls. There's only one goddamn stall in there. I get in there, there's a guy taking a piss in the stall. The urinal was open. 2 urinals open, so there was no reason for him to be pissing in the stall. But okay, maybe there were people there, fine. And I figure if nothing else, this won't take very long. He's just taking a piss, I apparently was waiting on Johnny Longdick, who it takes 14 years for all of the piss to get through his giant cock. Because this dude was pissing for fucking ever. And it was driving me nuts, man, because I'm like, I really need to shit. But okay. But then he pisses me off even more because he's whistling. Folks, when I'm in public and I'm using the facilities, that is business time, okay? I am there to perform a transaction with the toilet. This isn't my personal piss time. Move! But fine, he needs to piss, whatever. Thing that went over there and completely switched it over for me from him just being like, all right, to like, no, fuck that guy, was as he was leaving, he didn't wash his hands. Fuck that guy. You are an adult. That is gross. And if you don't do that, if you don't wash your hands after using the washroom, not only should people go over there and ridicule you for it, that should be expected. I fully believe that at the very least in human society, wash your hands after touching your dick. So that was the only crowd issue. Let's talk about merch real quick here. I didn't get a lot, but I did manage to go over there and grab a few things. Is this the thing? This isn't the thing! Damn it! Razz, is this the thing? No. Alright, well, merch, okay. I'm not starting over, goddammit. Merch. Boom! I went over there and got a new South Arcade shirt. This is my second one. I love the design of this. This is so badass. And it's the fucking tour shirt, man. So as soon as I saw this, I knew I had to pick it up. The other thing that I got was they had a couple of posters for the show, for the venue, like just kind of around. I just grabbed one of those off the wall. That was the only thing that I managed to grab. The only other thing I managed to grab was the set list, which I, again, gave to the little girl. Everything else, because they were right next to me, anything else that the band tossed, all went straight to them. Which is as it should be. I'm not complaining about that, but although I will mention real quick, as we were going over there and we were lining up to meet the band after the set, 2 people went before me. I was third in line. Just as I'm about to go over there and, meet the band and be like, ha! A guy from the staff goes over there and is like, hey, we have a hard line, 10 p.m., out time, and if we could just go over there and get in all the kids first and blah, 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 which is fine. I'm all for that, letting the kids go first. But you did this literally as I was about to walk into that position. So now if I take more than 2 seconds, I look like a douchebag. And I even turned around and looked at the rest of the line. I was like, does anybody want to go in front of me? What's going on here? It was awkward as fuck. Like, the guy had a good heart, but we also had 20 minutes wait time between when the band got off stage and when they came out. Why didn't we establish that rule up top? I feel like he had a good idea and his heart was in the right place, but his timing was garbage. And again, it just made me feel fucking weird. The band were cool about it. They actually apologized. One of the guys was like, yeah, that was kind of awkward. Sorry about that. But anyway, so yeah. This was my one merch piece. Let's talk pros and cons and give it a grade real quick. Pros, both of the bands, obviously, Raue and South Arcade both fucking killed it. They both brought that youthful energy. And they were a great, duo of bands to have together. They both put a lot of energy into things. Again, they both had that very sort of youthful spirit. They both had female vocalists, which was cool. The venue itself, Beat Kitchen, again, is a great spot. And again, it's a great, up-and-coming spot. It's not going to be the spot that, you're at later in your career, but early on. Loved it. Thought it was great. Sound quality, really nice. Crowd overall, except with Captain Longdick. Fuck that guy. Love the set. Love the set list. Love the merch, by the way. I really love this design. And just overall, the crowd were just really cool folks and everything. Cons, again, just Captain Longdick, fuck that guy. And to a certain extent, I'm not going to say fuck the staff guy, because again, I think he was aiming for the right place. But again, that was a little bit of a con for me, because it kind of soured things right at the end of the show. But overall, man, it was a great outing. I loved it. That's why my overall grade for it. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give it an A minus. I thought it was a really great show. I thought South Arcade killed it. I thought Raue was a lot of fun despite their technical difficulties. You know, there were obviously a few things where they could have shored stuff up a little bit and what have you. And again, you know, Captain Longdick and the one guy, you know, but overall, it was an absolutely fantastic show. Again, it's something where I can't wait to see South Arcade just get bigger and bigger, because I fully believe that they are. And to that end, I think it'll be great to see Raue, you know, like they're definitely a band that I could see, you know, growing as well. And I believe they're actually going to be playing in Chicago not too long from now. Anyway, I don't have a good outro for this series that I do, so folks, please keep kicking ass, support your local music scene, try to get out to live shows, buy merch when you can. Bands really do, you know, live and die off that stuff. And if you're going to go over there and take a piss with your gigantic cock at a show, at the very least, wash your fucking hands. Bye.